This is The Gorge, a podcast where my friend Sara and I gorge ourselves on overanalyzing a game or game-related topic. And if you want to support The Gorge, now that Patreon isn't fucking you over, you can donate to our Patreon. It's patreon.com/TheGorgePodcast. You can get cool stuff, like you can get a t-shirt. You can get 2 t-shirts a year with different designs on them, which is pretty dope. You can also get to pick a topic if you donate enough money. And we will record an episode based on whatever game you want us to play. So, that's cool.
Hit us up.
Yeah, we've got stuff to offer you. But for now, Sara, what are we talking about?
This week, it's a super fancy 2-parter, mostly because I'm busy tonight while we're recording. We're talking about Star Wars.
We are talking about Star Wars. We are talking about Star Wars for the PlayStation 2 and the PlayStation 4. Because a new Star Wars came out this year. I thought it came out on the Vita. I was so sure that the new Star Wars came out on the Vita. And I was wrong. It turns out it's only out on the PS4, which is actually kind of a bummer, because as we always say, RPGs belong on handhelds. On handhelds, yeah.
Yeah.
So today's episode is Star Wars Battlefront 2.
Which is, surprise, actually a JRPG.
Yeah.
No, we're fucking with you. It's Final Fantasy XII.
Yeah, it's Final Fantasy XII. We're talking about Final Fantasy XII because the Zodiac Age came out and it was great.
And it's just Star Wars.
Yeah, this game is just Star Wars. The whole plot of Final Fantasy XII, like there are literal parts of Final Fantasy XII where I can go, that's the scene from this movie.
There's literally parts and like whole character analogs where you just kind of go, this is Star Wars. I'm watching Star Wars. This
video game is the best Star Wars game to come out since like Battlefront 2 on the PlayStation 2.
It might be some of the best Star Wars content, period.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it might be... Some days I'm like, is it a better Star Wars game than KOTOR? And then I go, well, it sure the hell is prettier than KOTOR.
Yeah.
You know?
So what we're doing for this episode, like Sara mentioned, because ironically, Sara has to go see Star Wars tonight. Actual Star Wars.
I'm going to see The Last Jedi
so we're going to do a lot of the like gameplay and aesthetics and presentation stuff today, and then in a few days we'll do an episode 51.5 to follow up on the characters, because it won't be full-length episodes like we do for like Personas or whatever. Mm-hmm. This is just going to be one episode broken up into 2 parts within a few days. So
right, just so we can get some content up, because I know we've been kind of quiet lately. Because life happens, and it always happens super hard at this time of year. So, plus I've had a head cold, and apologies if I crash on, or if I cough on recording any. But yeah, so we're here. We wanted to record something, so we're just gonna like do like the the semi-non-spoilery parts of Final Fantasy XII.
Not the plot stuff, which is, a lot of discussion, but there is a lot to discuss within like the gameplay and the aesthetic, because this is, without a doubt, the most unique Final Fantasy game to exist.
It is. I always waffle on it and Final Fantasy IX, like which one is my favorite Final Fantasy. But I didn't have the time to replay FF12, so to get ready for this podcast, I've already played the game like twice now. So in order to get ready for this podcast, I did rewatch the cutscenes. I kind of just re-familiarized myself with the game. I watched a few people play it.
Right.
And I do think, having now kind of like soaked my feet back into it, and I don't have like time to kind of make Final Fantasy IX look better, which is not a strike against FF9, I do think Final Fantasy XII is probably, at the very least, my favorite aesthetics in a Final Fantasy game. It might be the best not my favorite Final Fantasy game, but the best Final Fantasy game.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
For a series like Final Fantasy, there's always a strong distinction between what is the best and what is your favorite.
Right.
And
there's a big difference.
Yeah. I think that it is, without a doubt, like not only for gameplay, but the aesthetic, presentation, everything about it. The only thing that I think is not unique about it, and I wish they would have done harder because it stands out in that way, the music is not good in this game.
It's the first game, I think, that I'm aware of that isn't Nobuo Uematsu. I don't know actually how to say his name, and I apologize. Uematsu? I don't know. The Final Fantasy composer guy.
Yeah.
He didn't do this one. It was their first time that they've ever had that, where they had a whole new composer. And I think, I don't dislike the music. It's just, in comparison to previous Final Fantasy scores, it's definitely weaker.
You know what's funny? Because just today, I actually saw like a small tweet thread from Mr. Feel, who is, if you don't follow him on Twitter, he's like a genius at video games. And
he's got some good-ass hot takes on video games.
Yeah, he's got some good opinions. And he was talking today, there was a little small discussion about like how most WRPGs tend to have orchestral scores, and it's like,
nothing.
You know, hey, if you were to like listen to the soundtrack for like Skyrim or something, or for like Fallout 4, like, could you identify a song?
I mean,
like,
yes,
but I mean, like,
for Fallout, but I mean, like, but I'm talking like, I think like really generic Western RPGs have a really bad sense of music. The way like Kingdoms of Amalur and stuff like that.
Yeah, the music is like orchestral and bombastic, but there's nothing like unique about it, and that's really
stand out.
That's really where 12 fails, and I think it only fails because everything else stands out so well. Yeah,
I think the music itself is serviceable. It does it best when it's referencing back to other Final Fantasy music. Like on the start screen, for example, it references like the da-da-da-da, you know, that you hear in like Final Fantasy I and all that stuff. Like those little, when it's riffing on that and kind of making its own version, like the Chocobo song, it actually is really good. But it's obviously basing off, it's got a base of Uematsu's music, who is like a kind of a genius. He's just really good at his job. So, you know, it has its weakness in the music, but it makes up for it in everything else. Literally everything else in Final Fantasy XII is just stellar.
I keep saying this, but it's true because it's so unique, and
it feels so different to every other WRPG.
If you were to
JRPG, sorry.
Yeah, if you were to take the Final Fantasy name off of this game, if you were to cut out Chocobos and Moogles, I would not think this was a Final Fantasy game.
Even funny is that the Moogles in this game are not your standard soft, round Moogles. They're more cat-like.
Yeah, they're or like, I thought they looked more like foxes almost, but they're more angular, you know?
Yeah. They're not cute little round puffies. They're like, they look more like actual animals instead of cute mascot characters.
They go from looking like little teddy bear type creatures to like an actual animal. Yeah, like an animal person. And it has so many things that like you would think would start showing up in other Final Fantasies, like the Viera or the what are the fat lizard folk called? The Banga?
Yeah, there's the Banga, there's the, oh my god, there's so many fucking races in Final Fantasy XII. I mean, like, that's part of it, is that, like, FF12 feels so much like an actual, like, the Evilus in Final Fantasy XII feels like such a place, like an actual place you could go. You could go on vacation to Evilus. Because there's just so many races. There's the Viera, there's the Banga, there's the Sikh, there's the Helgus, which is the guy at Bur-Omises. The Magic Pope. The Magic Pope is a different race than everybody else. There's the Urotaniensa. I mean, it's just, there's the Garif, who have really great designs for only appearing very rarely.
Yeah, I love them. They're only in like, so there's only one village of them, and that's it. But they're so unique.
And it's cool because you can like occasionally run into Garif like hunters and stuff out in the areas around Rabanastre, which is such like a universe building thing to be able to, in a Final Fantasy game, basically run into a single player Final Fantasy game. You're basically doing the equivalent of running into other players while exploring in an MMO.
Yeah.
Because Because, like, at times when I would play the game, I would be just watching this Garif guys, like, just hanging out and chasing after monsters on the the fields. And I was like, this is pretty cool. This is pretty cool. And monsters fight each other. Like, they actually interact. You can, like, lure one monster into attacking another one. It's amazing, you know?
Yeah, and, like, you know, it's so funny, this game, the way it looks, especially the Zodiac Age support, the remaster.
Yeah.
I kept forgetting this game came out in, what, 2003? 2?
Oh, my God. No. I was still in high school, so I want to say... You know, I should, like, have put this in the notes, but I didn't even think about it. I'm gonna say, like, 2005?
March 16, 2006.
Wow, okay, so yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, still, like, I forgot. I kept forgetting
this. It was on the PS2.
Yeah, this game looks so sharp. And even on... Okay, so, I want to explain this first off, because I want to tell my story of playing Final Fantasy fucking 12.
For 8 fucking years.
Alright, so... I did not actually start getting into Final Fantasies until well after the PS2's life cycle. I don't think I actually played 1 to completion until you made me play 7.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was that I made you play Final Fantasy VII in exchange for Vesperia.
I bought 10 and I didn't beat 10.
What? That's alright. 10's alright.
But, so I beat 7, and then I went back and I beat 6, and then...
You didn't finish 9.
I didn't finish 9!
I'm constantly nagging you to finish 9.
But I had a friend loan me her copy of 12.
Right.
Because she was obsessed with it, and she wanted me to play it. And what would happen is I would play for a while, and I would get past the intro, which is a very long intro in this game.
Oh my god, if that fucking joke is not the most applicable goddamn thing about Kingdom Hearts 2, then it's even more fitting in Final Fantasy XII. You gotta get enough money to get into the castle to get to the fun fucking part of the game.
And even before that, like, the part where you're playing as Rex is very slow because you don't get to set up your gambits and everything like that. So I would play 12, and then I would get to a certain point, and I dropped off of it. Like, just other games happened, and, you know, so on and so forth. So one day I'm like, oh, I really should get back to 12. And I played it, and I was like, oh, I can't even remember what's going on anymore. So I had to start over. So I started over, and I got a little further, and then she wanted it back. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm not even playing this, so yeah, you can have it back. And then I was in GameStop like a year later, and I saw 12 on the shelves, and I was like, oh man, you know what? I should give this a shot. I should really.
Another shot.
So I picked it up, and I started over again, and I got
because you didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, and I got a little farther, and I dropped off again.
No.
And then you were like, you should play 12, go play 12. So I got really far into 12. And then I dropped off.
Off again.
Next time, I tried to pick it up for a little bit. And I read up on the wiki, and I caught up on what was happening, and I made some pretty decent progress.
Right.
And then the Zodiac Age remaster was announced. And it was like, this game's coming out in less than a year. And I went, motherfucker! You sons of fucking bitches! You're gonna tell me you're gonna put out the remastered, better version of the game on the PS4. It's gonna have the good sound quality. It's gonna have the good job boards. And you're gonna put this out. And you're gonna make me buy it. And I'm gonna start over from the fucking beginning one more fucking time. And this time, I did it.
You did it! You did it like literally an hour ago. And I have never been more proud of you than I am in this moment. That it took you like 5 goddamn years to beat Final Fantasy XII. Now, in your defense, Final Fantasy XII is actually 5 years long.
It's, honestly, my hour count at the end was like 40 hours.
What?
And I spent about 80% of that game in X2 speed.
Oh, man. So that's like... Oh, my God.
That's
That's
between
so
70 and 80 hours, and I didn't do any side quests or anything. I did a little bit of grinding at the end, but that's just like, it's a hefty game. It is a wall. I was complaining to you for a while. I was complaining to you for a while.
Yeah.
What? Like that. Like, God, I need the reason we took a break in October is so that I could play more fucking Final Fantasy XII. And
it still took you until mid-December to actually beat it, to actually get there and finish it, because it is a wall of a video game. Like, in every sense of the word.
It is but
absurd, you know?
It was worth it, because...
It's worth it? It's so worth it. Oh, man. Like...
Yeah, it's like, well worth anyone playing. If you're a fan of RPGs, if you're a fan of classic RPGs, this is a good game to get out of your comfort zone a little bit, and try something new. If you're a fan of Final Fantasy, again, it's a good way to get out of your comfort zone and try something new, with this. If you're a fan of MMORPGs, you might want to give this a go, because I'm sure you'll breeze right through it.
Oh my god, yeah. If you like grindy games, then boy,
this is the one for you.
Game for you.
So like,
like, it shocks me how much content is in Final Fantasy XII. Like you could easily put 200, 300 hours into a single player JRPG.
There is so much content in this game.
Because there's all the guild quests, there's the monster hunts. I mean, there's tons of side content. Like, the main game is not the bulk of the game. There's 3 secret dungeons.
There are so many optional areas. There are entire areas of the map that I walked into. I got the little title card, and I was like, "Oh, this isn't where I'm supposed to go," and I never went back there.
And you never go back there. There's whole areas that are just loaded with, by the time you get there in the story, all of the enemies are 10, 20 levels ahead of you. So you're like, oh, I shouldn't be here. And then you think, maybe I'll come back at some other point in the story. But no, the thing about the game is, the weird thing is that a lot of this game, you don't go back to the same areas. And there's not a lot of backtracking in the story. You know what I mean? Which is super impressive to me, because, other JRPGs tend to fall on that, in that comfort zone of, we'll just make you keep going back and forth to the same 10 towns over and over again.
There's an interesting thing in a lot of RPGs, and I kind of compare this to, something like Tales of Symphonia or to Final Fantasy VII, which is, in those two games, you're basically going in a circle. On the world map, you're going from one town to the next, and you're kind of, going more or less in a singular path around the world map. But in 12, it's very different, and you jump from place to place a lot.
Yeah, because when you start the game with a plot convenient airship at your disposal, you can do the jet setting, world hopping storyline that the game allows for. And that's really kind of what makes it so interesting, is that because of this, you get to just see the coolest fucking.
Okay, I don't know what I want to start. I want to start with gameplay or presentation. Okay, so let's
aesthetics. Let's start there, because I feel like I have more to say about that than I do about the gameplay, even though the gameplay
there's a lot I want to discuss
really
about the gameplay. I know normally this podcast exists to praise things, but there's a lot I want to actually discuss about the gameplay, so we'll do that. Yeah, we'll do that one later. But the aesthetics in this game and the overall design of the dungeons, the overworld map stuff is all just breathtaking in its uniqueness. And I used to think, say what you will about 10, but 10 has some really great looking areas. And
it does.
12 looks so different from that. And the way the dungeons look, the way the towns are laid out, it's very interesting in a way that it's like how non-linear and how like kind of complicated and almost obstructive the towns are laid out. Like, think about how Dalmasca's laid out. You can't... Yeah, Rabanastre. You cannot
Rabanastre.
Go from, like, one place to the other quickly. You have to go down, like it's laid out in, like, back alleys and stuff. And...
Yeah, it feels like an actual place people live. Like, that's the thing about cities like Rabanastre and Arcades and Bougerba. Oh my god, Bougerba's a fucking maze. That's what makes them so cool, though, is because these cities, it feels like they were designed like places people live. You know, like they feel like actual cities that people exist in, and there's NPCs on the street, and they change with different plot events. So there's different characters wandering around whenever you come back to a city, and the alleys are like these little tight halls, and you've got to like go through here and come out here, and they do that smart thing that Vesperia did, and then no other Tales game ever seemed interested in doing, where they create the illusion of being in a big city by having areas like roped off, but you can still see them, so you feel like you're actually in like a real town.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is. It's like you can still see tons of building and stuff in the distance.
Yeah, and it creates this illusion that you're in in a big place, because that's the thing, is that, sometimes people, that's like the recurring joke of JRPGs, is this is apparently the largest city in the world.
Yeah,
It only
exactly.
has like 12 houses in it, But like, no, Arcades is the biggest city in the world, like aggressively big, because you have to get around with like you have to take air cars, and there's alleyways, and there's these huge buildings, and it feels like a metropolis because it is one.
Well, I love the overall aesthetics of Arcades is great, because you walk into this city and it looks like a fantasy, like industrial age or to like the 1920s era New York, with like street lamps and these tall buildings, and it's just starting to get modernized. And there are taxis everywhere, and there are the upper class people walking around, scholars and like businessmen and stuff.
And even like, and just the aesthetics of the city is like that cool. They found a way to like make fantasy art Deco or Art Nouveau, where it does that job of evoking this idea of like a fantasy 1920s city, where it's like you're on the cusp of a big change in your society, and so all of this city is just so alive. And there's the cutscenes of when you first get to Arcades have these like air cars flying around, and the Senate building is, well, for one, it's the Senate building from Star Wars, but for two, it's huge. It like the main government building in Arcades is not a castle. Like, this is how you know it's like a super modern empire, is because like the main government building in Arcades is a government building. It's a building that exists for the sole purpose of managing this huge, the government that has to preside over this massive empire.
That's so cool.
How cool is that? I don't know why the idea that the fact that there's like an actual Senate, like a building that exists for the Senate in a JRPG, is so cool to me. But it's like JRPGs tend to fall back on these tropes of like castles and blah blah blah, and you never get to see like the boring inner workings of politics.
And politics is like the thing.
But Final Fantasy XII is packed to the fucking gills.
Politics is its thing. This game is all about political conflict.
Yeah, like super cool political intrigue, and so they had to create these buildings that were for that purpose. So, the Senate has this amazing giant, and it kind of even looks like the building in Times Square, like the really skinny building in New York. because it starts at a point and then it fans out backwards just like that. And I'm losing the name of it right now, so forgive me. Somebody correct me on Twitter. But so it has this cool modernist architecture, and because of it, it just feels so much more real than any other
Final Fantasy, really. It's like, even including stuff like 15, like, I think 12's aesthetics are so much stronger than what I've seen in 15.
15's aesthetics are interesting because it's a merging of like genuine modern times and magic. But the problem is that I feel like 15 relies too heavily on the modern stuff to actually feel revolutionary. There's a handful of set pieces in 15 that are actually breathtaking. But for the most part, it's just like, these are cities. You know, this is a city. I've been to a city like this before. You know, it's New York or it's Venice or something like that. It's obvious that the people at Square Enix had a lot of fun on their fact-finding missions, because it means they got to go to Europe. And I don't blame them. I would use company money to go to Europe too if I could. But yeah. And then, like, that's the thing, is that Final Fantasy 15 has an aesthetic that feels like stuff you've seen before, and that's what makes it modern. But Final Fantasy XII feels modern and still uses stuff
exactly. Yeah, that's what it is. You know? This is whole, and every of the, like, the big major towns are all completely different from one another. That's what really makes it stand out.
There's their area.
Yeah, the area village. Yeah,
the Vieira village. The names in this game are hard. Names in this game are really hard. There's a lot of them too. There's a lot of them. There's an aggressive number of very complicated names and
different people that use these names.
The Grand Kiltius at Bromeses, and I'm like,
the what? Oh, the guy in charge. Okay, yeah. Look for the guy with the biggest hat. Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Magic Pope, gotcha. And then there's all of the names. There's Vane. There's Larsa Farinus Solidor and Ashelia Bernargan.
Yeah,
Damaska,
okay.
And I'm like, chill.
And Vaughn.
Chill.
It's Vaughn. He doesn't have a last name. He's just Vaughn.
Just Vaughn. But that's the thing, man. That's what makes it so cool, is that's how it, like, legitimately is. Like, in the real world, back in the day, if you were a poor person,
you just got a name, and that was it.
You know? Like, you were just Tom, you know? And, like, you were Tom, and you make shoes, so your last name is Shoemaker, you know? Thomas Shoemaker, congratulations. But, like, the rich people in the world, they get cool names and cool titles, and so, you know, everybody who's rich and famous in Final Fantasy has big, long names. There's Ashelia Bernargan Dalmasca and Famfran Bonanza. And
it keeps going, and that's,
you know what I mean?
What makes it really stand out is that, like, they went really in depth with their social structure, their class hierarchy. They made, like, the distinction, the speech patterns, the dialogue, the way things are said, the accents.
The accents in this game are so
you
good.
like never see accents done like this in JRPGs.
No, it's either, like, usually, and even in, like, Western RPGs, you get a lot of, like, either everybody is from England, or, like, you get really weird, like in Fallout, you get people with Russian accents 200 years after Russia stopped being a thing. So you just get easily
recognizable accents that have become, like, the staple for like, oh, this character is from this aesthetic, you know?
Yeah, this character talks like this, and that means they're like this, like the brother, like, you know, Vadim in Fallout 4. He's a crazy drunk guy, and he loves to party and get in trouble. He's Russian.
And you never see Icelandic accents, for instance, in anything. And yet, here we are.
And the thing is, like, what makes it super interesting about the Icelandic accents with the Vieira is that, like, you would expect to see an Icelandic accent in like a cold place. But they decided to use the... now, granted, that's partly, I think, because like Icelandic culture still has like a leaning towards at least sort of making the gestures toward like fairies and shit like that. At least I hope it's Iceland. I'm sorry if it's not. And so, you know, you have, like, this idea of, like, nature and stuff like that. So that's maybe why they did it. Or maybe it's just the fact that Friends' voice actor can do that accent.
I read that, like,
really,
yeah,
really
they were
good.
just like, oh, she can do the accent, so let's just try it and see. And it worked out really well, because, again, there's nothing like that.
There's nothing like it. It's so unique. And then, like, people love to make fun of, like, you know, Ondor, because don't believe Ondor's lies. But, like, the accents in Bergerba, like the universal accent of Bergerba, which I can't even place.
Vague.
Like, I don't even know what Ondor's
it's like a
accent is supposed
combination
to
of
be.
like Celtic and like, but also vaguely Middle Eastern too.
Yes, it's like this weird mishmash of different like enunciations, and Ondor has such a strange speech pattern. But then, and you think like, oh, it's because he's like a rich guy. But no, that's how all of the NPCs in Bergerba talk.
That's just how they do it. And
dialect. How cool.
Name one other JRPG that has regional dialects.
I know! And the fact that they still keep it consistent, because Ash is like is royalty, but she's from Rabanastre, which means she doesn't have an accent. And the other two people who don't have accents, who are poor people, are Vaughn and Pinello. So they're all from Dalmasca, and Dalmasca has a North American affect to their language in the English version. So even though the fact that Ash speaks like a noble and Vaughn and Pinello speak like regular people,
I know, it's so impressive that they put this much care into it.
That's so much work.
And you
How
never
cool is
ever
that?
ever see anything like that.
No, it's so good. Oh man. I get, obviously, I'm very enthusiastic about the language and the accents.
Not only that, but like you the first time you really get a taste of it is with like Balthier. Is like you hear his accent and you hear his speech pattern and you're like, oh, well, obviously he's a showboating hero type, so that's why he talks with that flourish. But then no, other people in like in the environment, like in the world, also have that flourish to their voice. It's just Balthier's more flamboyant about it.
Yeah, and Balthier is from the same place as Larsa and other Arcadian. He's Arcadian, so he talks with that accent. Like, he has, like, the vague British affect to his voice, the way that Vane and Larsa do.
And same with Bosch, too. Like, he has a bit of an accent, too, and it's just like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's from a different country. Him and Noah, and, like, even their British accents are, like, slightly different to the Arcadian British accent, because they're from a country that doesn't even exist anymore called Landis. So, of course, they have a different voice.
Oh my god, it's so cool.
How amazing! How cool is that?
Oh.
How cool is that? It's so good. It is so... I love all of the every single creative decision that went into Final Fantasy XII. I just adore. I think they're just some of the smartest.
And that's why it's such a shame. And honestly, everyone, if you want to play this game, get it on the PS4, because the PS2 version, in order to make this game look as fucking gorgeous as it does, and we'll get to that in a minute, but in order to make this game look as fucking gorgeous as it does, they had to take all of the sound and they had to cram that shit as tight as possible.
So it's super compressed, and I got used to the crew. I mean, again, I've only
everyone
ever played
sounds like
PS2
they recorded through a walkie-talkie, and even then you can still
great.
get the accents. But like, oh, popping in the PS4 disc and hearing that clean, crisp audio, it's just
oh my god,
oh, everything changed.
Oh. Everything changes, and the game. I mean, yeah, the whole point, like you said, the whole point of the audio sounding kind of like it was recorded in a tin can is so that they can have as much space possible on a PS2 disc for the game we got. And you played the Zodiac Age, but you've played the PS2, and frankly, like, the PS2 version of... I think you almost should play the PS2 version of Final Fantasy XII, even just a little bit, to grasp the fact that Final Fantasy XII looks like that, with a draw distance like that, and load times that are that short, and it's on the PS2.
Just either get the disc, it's probably like $5 on Amazon, whatever, or... like, look up a YouTube video of the PS2 version and be like, that's on a PS2.
That's not an early PS3 game. That's on the PS2. Now, it's at the very, very ass end of the PS2's life, but you know what else came out at the ass end of the PS2's life and looked kind of like dog shit and had terrible load times?
Yeah, exactly.
4. Which is also an equally huge game, but Square Enix is staffed entirely by black magicians, people who have sold their souls to the devil in order to do really absurd things in video games. And,
there is literal arcane magic in 12 to make it look as fucking gorgeous as it does.
There's something imbued on those discs that lets it do the things it does. Because the only game on a PS2 that I can think of that has better facial animations is Silent Hill 3. And nothing else tops. Other than Silent Hill 3, which still... If you haven't watched a Silent Hill 3 cutscene lately, this is like a diversion real quick. If you haven't watched a cutscene from Silent Hill 3 lately, go watch one and be like, what the fuck? This was on the PS2? What the fuck? But even, like, man, like, okay, the facial models in Final Fantasy XII are so good that I was always really disappointed when it would go to
Mm-hmm.
You know? Because the FMVs have, like, that kind of smooth, soft, like, kind of everybody's had all of their imperfections buffed out of their faces look, and everybody's hair is just a little too perfect. And they're technically fine, you know, like the big action sequences look great, but like in comparison to the charm and the character and the like the FMV models are weirdly unexpressive.
It's not
unexpressive in comparison.
Yeah,
to the
it's
PS2
not quite
games.
like as charming or like endearing when it switches to FMV mode, and it's
because it's almost too polished and it doesn't feel like real life anymore. But they're not as expressive. They don't have as many like little weird facial things going on at any one time. And the PS2 in-game character models are incredible. They are so detailed. Like, okay, speaking of like Silent Hill Homecoming, everybody has short hair in that dog shit game because the developers were too lazy to try and figure out a way to make long hair work, right? So like in LA Noire, all of the women have their hair up in buns, or they have like a short pixie cut. It's because they're all I know in LA Noire there was a different reason. But like Silent Hill Homecoming, because all of the developers were too fucking lazy to just figure out how to make a ponytail.
No, I do want to quick anecdote about LA Noire. And that's the reason that game is in the 40s in the first place, is because all the women had short hair, and that's like they could get away with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's why like we have to set this game in the 40s, or else our mocap technology will not work.
It won't
Homecoming's dog shit.
But that said, then you go look at Homecoming is total dog shit, and all of those women have their hair in buns, or they have short hair, or they have their hair in like the little short, like shitty ponytail. And then you go back and you play Final Fantasy XII on the PS2, and there's Fran with her long, flowing, beautiful ponytail that never once clips through her body. And like Ash's hair, which is short, but it has like a body to it, so it like fluffs around her face and shit. That doesn't clip. Because Square Enix is staffed entirely by dark magicians.
It's possible. It's entirely possible to make your anime JRPG game and not have your characters' hair clip through their bodies. Namco Bandai.
Exilia, get your hair under control.
Not just that, but every Tales game that like lately they've been giving all their female protagonists really long hair. You guys are not good at that. You need to get better!
You're really bad at it. You're really, really bad at it. Just because you gave Velvet one token shoulder braid that's always there, you just make sure that part never clips through her, doesn't mean you've gotten any better at making sure hair doesn't clip, you idiots.
Yeah.
But then here's fucking Square Enix being gods, basically, and making this... I mean, like, we've already talked for 40 minutes about just the look and feel of Final Fantasy XII, because that is the biggest... That's, like, the thing I have to use to sell it to people, is, like, this game is on the PS2.
It looks...
And it looks like
it straight up does look like it should be on the PS3. Now, granted, an early PS3 game, but, like,
PS3 game.
It stacks up. And, like, looking at the remaster, I'm like, what did they even do?
They just updated the textures. They gave Vaughn's shitty painted on abs
a little bit of depth there, and it's like they cleaned up and they put it in a higher aspect ratio, and they cleaned up the audio and the music and stuff. But it's like you didn't do a lot. It still looks this fucking good.
It still looks this fucking good. Really, all they did was sharpen the textures and stuff and make it look a little bit cleaner.
You think about, like... Just take a really good look at something like, say, Balthier's vest, or even Vaughn's vest, where it's like there's so much detail that stands out.
Oh, I know. You can still pick out the individual details, like the defining details of like Balthier's vest has like very specific like pieces to it, and you can see it. And I mean, even like the really subtle things, like even though this is a really strange option, like a really strange design decision, I kind of like am question marks about it all the time. The designed on panty lines for Pinello, they're not panty lines, but her costume has like in her panty area like lines that look like fancy panty lines, and I don't know what the purpose of that was. Like, it's just a weird design decision.
They stand out, and they're there, and you can see them.
And you didn't need to do that, but you did. And it's like, I'm kind of weirded out by it, but I'm also kind of impressed, because that is a level of detail on a PS2 model that you didn't need to go to.
Probably shouldn't exist, considering it's a PS2 game, and it's like, I didn't know we could get that good.
And like you can see like the individual stitching on characters' clothes sometimes.
It's jaw-dropping how good it looks. And
the game is
not only just like its fidelity and its high texture quality and all that, but like the design and the layout, like you talked about. I want to talk about.
Yes.
I noticed this like a good 2/3 of the game in. Is that, I don't know if it's just me, but like, there was something really unsettling about the way the dungeons are designed in this game. And I think they feel very open and very exposed. And it's like, I'm always like, there's something like, I talked about this with Nier, where like when you go in the buildings in Nier and how there's no decoration, there's no like furniture or anything in them, and it creates this kind of like weird unsettling feeling. I kind of got that same sort of, like, unsettling chill when I was playing 12. And I think it's part of it is because I'm more used to modern JRPGs that tend to have a little bit of platforming or a little bit of exploration, in which there is none in 12. There's no, like, ladder climbing or block puzzles that you're pushing around. It's all... No. You are in... It feels... You know what 12 feels like? Even more than, like, an MMORPG? It feels like a tabletop game.
It does feel like a tabletop game. It feels kind of like the tabletop game that like a bunch of people at Square Enix played and decided
like
to
the dungeon layouts feel
a
lot like you're just going through rooms and there are enemies in these rooms that you're fighting, and it works because again they look fucking amazing.
They look amazing.
And, so you're not, like, getting bored of, like, hallway after hallway, but, like, and, there is, like, a lot of exploration to do in it, and these maps are gigantic.
I know, it's bizarre.
So, it's one of the weird things where, like, this is kind of, like, when I get to, like, more gameplay about this, I'll talk about, where it's, like, this game's made of a lot of bad things that end up being a really good thing.
Yeah, it has a bunch of, like... Okay, so I actually was thinking about this earlier. The dungeons in Final Fantasy XII are what the dungeons...
Yes! That's a really good way of putting it.
Because the dungeons in 12 are basically the same conceptually as the ones in Berseria, where it's like, here's some ruins, here's a hole, like, you know, here's some ruins, here's a sewer, here's a mine. You know, they're all kind of like enclosed areas and stuff. But they make them work because they're really detailed and they feel like actual places that people have been, and they're huge, but they're not like overwhelmingly huge in the way that Berseria's are, and they're still like visually interesting enough to not make you want to kill yourself, the way Berseria's do.
It has awful dungeon design.
Dungeon design, as good as that
awful.
Game. As good as that game is.
Terrible
really,
layout.
really
But
design.
you know, a lot like how we mentioned with the towns, like the layout for 12's dungeons is quote unquote terrible. Mm-hmm. It's very
like,
much like,
in a good way.
I would not have designed this area to be laid out like this, but it's so unique that in that way that it works and you're still intrigued by it.
Yeah, it kind of works, and there's just kind of enough going on, and because you're not going to a separate battle screen with every fight, you, I don't know, there's not that start and stop that you get
or
in
other
Berseria
Final Fantasies, you know, random
like
encounters
where,
and
like,
stuff.
Or just, you know, even not like a random encounter. Like, the enemy is on screen, but the fight will take you to a separate screen, like a combat screen. Because Final Fantasy doesn't have a combat screen, all of these long hallways, you're still, like, mentally engaged in them because you're busy worrying about all the shit trying to kill you, because there's a lot of shit trying to kill you in any one dungeon in Final Fantasy XII.
The enemy layout and the population of these areas is a little much, a little... Mm-hmm. So I mentioned, like, it's very easy to get overwhelmed in this game.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Larsa, and your infinite high potions in the original version.
Which
they
sucks,
fixed that
but...
in the Zodiac Age.
What can you do?
Which sucks. Because the Lusu mines are the best place to grind in the game, as long as you've got Larsa with you. Because it's like, oh, Larsa just used another high potion. Let's fucking go! Yeah. You know?
But like, yeah, it's...
there's a lot going on in the fights in this game. So it kind of... Hey, cool.
You said something about the fights in this game, I think.
There's a lot going on in the fights, and because there's a lot going on in the fights, and you're never going to another combat screen, it's actually a good thing that the dungeons in the area are kind of simple.
Yeah.
But not like bad simple. Like, they're still visually interesting, at least, unlike Berseria. And so it all kind of works. Like, all of these disparate parts that should be kind of garbage kind of click together perfectly.
Mm-hmm, for sure. What I mean? That's what it boils down to, is that this is a game that works, that's surprising in how much it works.
Yeah, because it has a lot of very strange decisions inside of it that are like, what were you thinking? Like, I still don't know how quick it is.
Yeah, well, so let's talk about the gameplay, because that's where I have a lot of opinions of. And I mentioned early on, this is a great game to play to get out of your comfort zone, and I think that's absolutely true, because if you're a seasoned Final Fantasy fan, you come to it, like, yeah, okay, every Final Fantasy is different. That's the whole point, is that they're all different aesthetically, they're all different, they have variations for gameplay, you know, even 1 through 6, which were still kind of like the same sprite-based ones, have some variations in how things go. 5, you know, you can pick whatever class you want. 6 has a ton of party members, and they each have one unique ability attached to them, you know. But 12 is just so different.
Odd.
It does completely away with the turn-based. It gets rid of that entirely for a sort of command-based MMORPG light style of, like, setting up commands to go off and, like, basically setting up, like, macros like you would playing WoW or something. And, you know, kind of letting the game run itself a little bit, with you kind of just being an overseer. Because, you know, what you would do is you would set up your gambits for your characters, and you'd set them to heal whenever they got to X health, or to attack with this attack whenever an enemy looked like this, or, you know, whatever. And it's like, you really only have to kind of step in if something unique happens, or if you need to, like, take care of a healing thing or whatever. And it was very weird to get through this game and not have to really play it a lot.
Yeah, and it's kind of a strange thing because it was like the primary criticism of Final Fantasy XII when it came out was that the game is playing itself. But it is, I don't know, I really like, and I'm kind of biased because I love Final Fantasy XII, so sometimes I'm like, I have to criticize 12? No! But I do really like the Gambit system. I think maybe they went a little overboard on it in removing some player agency, but I think more games, especially games like Persona and Tales, could benefit from kind of lifting concepts from the Gambit system.
I think the ideal situation is a blending of what Tales does and what Final Fantasy XII does, in that the Gambit system allows you to get real precise with your commands. If they get hit with this status ailment, use a remedy. If they are knocked down, immediately drop everything and start curing, and revive them. But when it comes to that's all really, really good for defensive maneuvers. It's horrible for offensive maneuvers.
Yeah, it does because a little bit of fun,
because not only that, but it's for a while I had Bosch set up so that he's my tank and his job is to get in there and hit things. So he's there was a whole chunk of his license board for a while. There was all these Gambit slots, and I was like, I don't need these. He needs to hit things and then throw a Phoenix down or a remedy, and then attack. Right. That's all he needs. Hello?
Okay. Yep, I'm here.
Okay, that works better. So anyway, I was saying. I was saying that basically, when my Bosch setup was just, hey, attack things, and it's in contrast, my Pinello was my black mage, and there was no way for me to be like, okay, Pinello, use black magic, instead of replace your basic attack, just cast spells.
Right.
In Tales games, you can pick and choose which spells a character will just throw out.
Right, yeah.
And you can't really do that, and it's good for... I had Pinello set up to be like, okay, well, if they're weak to this magic, use this. If you're weak to this, use that magic.
Right.
But, and then it's like, okay, well, then just attack.
Yeah. It is a little interesting.
So there's ways you could have fixed it. And like I said, it's really, really good, and it's super useful for defensive, for healing, and for status ailment recovery, because you can just be like, okay, if they're down, drop everything, throw a Phoenix down, throw a Revive, or whatever, cast Asuna, or throw a Remedy down, throw healing potions down. You can set that up great. It's just the offensive thing. It's there's no strategy offensively, basically.
Yeah, you're just kind of hit things until they die.
Yeah.
And with some minor micromanaging in certain cases where you're selecting the attacks. I tend to micromanage during boss fights, and then during encounter, just rando in the world encounters, I let the game do its own thing while I just pay attention to it. So, and that kind of works, that works well enough. I'm not really sure how I would go about really fixing, I guess, like you said, a blend of Final Fantasy and Tales would work really well for it. Because I do understand kind of it removes some engagement from the game. Especially because a lot of these dungeons are just hallways with encounters in them.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't always work, but
it works enough of the time that it's fun.
It's something that should be tried again.
Yeah, that's
I know that Final Fantasy XV you play as Noctis, right?
I think. I don't know for sure.
I don't know enough about Final Fantasy 15, so maybe 15 has a semi-gambit system. I don't know. I'm increasingly becoming a little bit more interested in 15, so once the actual finished version of the game comes out, I might play it. But it's not finished yet, so.
But so that being said, like, there is one big nitpicking thing, and we kind of need to talk about it because it's kind of the crux of a lot of this game. The job board, or the license board, sucks.
The license board still kind of sucks.
I mean, the Zodiac Age fixed it, and it made it really nice, and it streamlined and cleaned up, which is what it needed more than anything else.
But it still kind of sucks.
It's still not an ideal leveling up system in your game.
No, it's not good. It's not good. Just give people skill trees.
Yeah.
You know? Just give people, like, you know, different skill paths. Like the sphere grid, but less hideous and like a nightmare to navigate. And maybe a little bit more branching. But still have it be like, you have this license and this license, so you can only pick the skills on this tree. I don't know, I don't make video games, that's just me kind of spitballing.
Yeah, no, there's ways to do it that are better than this, for sure.
Yeah.
And I get it, you wanted to try something unique, and that's what this game is. It's nothing but full of unique concepts that we've never seen again. This is just one of the ones that didn't work, and it
didn't work.
It dragged a lot of the game down because it's like, okay, well, the skill I need right now is buried underneath all this, and I can't get to it for a while. Like,
yeah.
And in the old game, if you branched off into the wrong direction, you had to really work to get back to, you know.
Yeah.
It's very, and again, the Zodiac Age fixes a lot by actually giving people classes to pick from and letting you stick only with that. But there's still just this, like, the class system works really well in 10.2 and it works really well in 5. It did not work quite as well in 12, and a lot of 12's problems that it doesn't do a good job of explaining some of its gameplay concepts.
Yeah.
Like the quickenings, which I don't know how those are supposed to work. I read, like, this quickening doesn't combo well into others, and I was like, I just hit the button.
How was I supposed to know that? You don't tell me these things. Like, I know people like to accuse video games these days of being a little too handholdy, and that's probably true in some instances. But, like, if your game is going to have a ton of systems in it, and Final Fantasy XII has a ton of different systems in it, you kind of need to explain those systems, you know what I mean?
Well, it's funny because they have, like, the log book where you can, like, get quick tutorials, and they don't have a section about quickenings. Or if they do, it's just like, you can use quickenings to do ultra attacks.
And that's great.
Okay, but, like, you can combo them, and, like, the game tells me if I press X, then my other party member will do their quickening too. And sometimes I have to randomize it to get a quickening back.
Yeah.
What does that...
How am I timing it?
What do I do?
How do I make the quickening pop up faster? Is there a way to do it? Is it like a chaining thing?
Sometimes it counts down really quickly. Sometimes it takes a while to count down. Is there
a reason behind that?
I don't know.
I'm lost and I'm scared and I'm afraid to use this quickening in this fight because, like, what if I fuck it up and then I've just wasted my super attack? Like, help me, Final Fantasy XII, please. I need your help right now because it makes no sense. Sometimes this game is a little obtuse.
Yeah, that's really it. Is that it's just like this game. A lot of the way this game does, it feels kind of like arbitrary. Like the game, like I don't know how to describe it. In that it feels kind of like this kind of ties back to the dungeons too, where I feel like a lot of the dungeons exist in the way they are because like you needed a dungeon for this part.
Yeah.
And it's like, this game is so in-depth with, like, its city layout and, like, its NPCs, and we'll get to the plot stuff later, which the plot is, like, this finely tuned, you know, perfect masterpiece of story. And then it's like, the dungeons are like, okay, you are in this tomb, and it's laid out like this, and it's full of monsters, and like, I don't know, a lot of JRPGs around this time, I feel like, justified the reason why it was full of monsters in their areas, or like, you know, like stuff like Abyss or Symphonia would kind of like give an explanation as to why there are creatures around.
Right, I think, and I don't mind the whole non-explanation for monsters, because like, that's just kind of the world they live in. There's monsters, you know?
Yeah.
Like wild animals. Like, I get it, you know? But it is just kind of, there's just a lot of really strange design decisions in Final Fantasy XII. Like the fact that you can travel with save crystals, right? But you have to buy certain save crystals to do it. But those are really cheap, and you never really ever run out of them. So why make me buy them at all?
Yeah. And like, there's also like, there's weird, like, even like the way you earn money in this game is you don't actually pick up gil from enemies, you pick up loot, and then you sell the loot.
Sell that loot?
And then the loot unlocks other things from the bazaar. But
it doesn't ever tell you what does what, you just kind of have to guess, and sometimes it's like, if you sell this thing, and then later you sell this thing, you unlock this thing. But sometimes it's like, you have to sell this thing and this thing at the exact same time to unlock this thing. There's no status bar or anything. It's not like Vesperia's, like, synthesis section, where it tells you, well, you need this and this to make this. It's just, like, sell the stuff to get the thing. And sometimes it's like you can buy a thing, but like it might be a worse price than if you bought it normally, and the game has no way of letting you know that like you might get screwed. And I mean, that's kind of the point of the bazaar, is it's like a gamble, but like
it doesn't explain that to you, and it's just one of the many weird concepts that there are some that I'm like, I want to see this more in a game. There's some that I'm like, I'm glad this doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. There's a lot of really strange things going on in 12, and it's very experimental, and it's obvious they were like, let's use some of the stuff from Final Fantasy XI and put it in 12. So there's like a job board, and you can take side quests, and a lot of them are hunt this monster and do this, and some of them are super bosses that take like 18 hours to beat.
Now that is something I would not mind seeing in more modern RPGs, because
for sure,
because the idea of like an 8-hour boss battle is kind of cool.
It's kind of great, but the thing is that you can only do it with Final Fantasy. Like other games could do it for sure, but the thing is that the Gambit's literally the whole reason Square Enix put these boss fights in there is because the Gambit system basically allows you to walk away from your screen.
Yeah, you know? It gives you a chance.
You can multitask while the thing is going on, as long as you kind of have, like, you know, that thing that says man mowing yard during tornado says he was keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the Gilgamesh boss fight. Mm-hmm. You were keeping an eye on it, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it kind of really can only work in a Final, because every, like, you know, other games, you're human. And the idea of an 8-hour boss fight in, I don't know, a Tales game makes me want to die. Because I once did a boss fight in Tales that took an hour, and I thought I was literally going to die by the end of it. So,
now, that being said, if this were a handheld game and you could put it in suspend mode and come back to it later, it wouldn't be that bad.
Yes. Honestly, yeah. FF12's like Gambit system works really well for, that's a strange thing to say, but Final Fantasy XII's Gambit system works really well for a handheld game, because it's this idea of you are out and about and you're doing other things, so you can open the game and play it and kind of micromanage your team while they like grind and stuff, and then you can close it and go back to doing whatever you were doing. But like sitting on your couch and like watching the game kind of play itself it does not kind of give you the same feeling, you know?
Yeah, and you know what? There's two things. One of them is like, this is like a little add-on side note to that, because this kind of ties back to aesthetics, and it kind of ties back to like how the weird micromanaging it does at gameplay. It's actually really weird to me in a JRPG that you can just open the actual menu anywhere. Like, in the middle of combat, you can just open your player menu.
And switch characters in and out of combat.
Yeah, and, like, swipe your teammates out and, like, spend license points and change... Like, I guess you would have to change your gambits, if, you know, depending on the situation, but, like, you can just do anything from the menu at any time, anywhere.
Yeah, it's really weird that there's not, like, a restriction to swap, like, or there isn't, like, a way to swap characters in and out of battle that isn't just, like, opening the menu. I don't know. There's something weird about the fact that you can just open the menu in the middle of battle and change people's weapons and stuff.
Yeah, and now,
you know?
And now, like, there's also a weird thing where it's, like, I didn't find it. Maybe there is one, but I swear I tried everything. There isn't a way to manually select your party leader. Like, the only way I could figure to do it, because I liked playing with Vaughn as the leader, because he ended up being the highest level, so I wanted to put him in charge whenever I could, you know? And he would he had a lot of good healing and offensive attacks, so, like, I wanted him in all the time. Right. And it's like, whenever Vaughn went down, it's like, okay, pick a new party leader. And then, like, okay, now I'm playing as Balthier.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you just press left or right on the D-pad.
I could have sworn I tried that, but...
Maybe, but again, it's been like 3 years since my last playthrough of Final Fantasy XII, so like, my memory is kind of rusty, but I think there is a way to change who you're playing as in the middle of...
I know for sure there's no way to do it from the menu. To do it from the menu, you have to, like, deselect the party leader from the party, and it'll jump to the highest available slot.
Huh.
Yeah, it's really weird, and I'm probably doing it wrong, but it's like, again, it's like that thing where it's like, you didn't tell me how to do this.
Sometimes it's nice to get, like, an explanation on how to do really simple things in a video game, because it's like, these simple things, like changing your party leader, are different in different JRPGs, like Tales.
Yeah.
It's, you know... That's just, and after a certain point, you kind of end up shrugging, because you're like, oh, it's just Final Fantasy XII. That's just how Final Fantasy XII do.
It's part of its...
It doesn't make any fucking sense.
It's part of its weird charm that doesn't make any sense, and is sometimes really convoluted for no reason.
And is really frustrating sometimes, and you're just kind of like, why are you doing this to me, Final Fantasy XII? I'm only one woman.
Yeah. There's a lot of times where, like... Yeah. Oh. Hello? Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of times where, like, I would just get overwhelmed and there's literally nothing I could do. And it's just, okay, well, my gambits failed me. And I'm dead.
I guess this is how I die. Yeah, the game is strange. It's strange. That's a good way to just kind of, like, put it all together. But at the end of the day, for some reason... I mean, for some reason. We both know why. The plot. The plot and the story is what it does.
And we'll get to all of that later on.
In a few days.
But, I mean, fuck.
Yeah.
It's such
like, that's kind of what staples all of it together. You know?
Yeah. Hello?
Hey.
Okay, are we...
Can you hear me? Hey?
Yeah, hold on. Send me the timestamp again. I'm gonna reconnect to this one.
Are you on Ethernet?
Now I should be, yeah. It should be good now. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll do some fine-tuning for this. Alright. Yeah, anyway, you were saying what staples this all together?
The plot. The plot staples all of these weird, strange gameplay systems together, and it all just kind of ends up working, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you end up being, like, really willing to suffer through a lot of, like, inherent strangeness in Final Fantasy XII, because it has a lot of really interesting things going on in it, and a lot of really interesting characters. And the world itself is interesting enough that you are willing to tolerate some weird bullshit just to look at it, you know?
Yeah. The plot is so... Again, it's so different. Like, everything else in this game, it's so fucking different. And it's so in-depth and deep, and these characters are so interesting, and they don't fit into, like, they don't really fit into, like, the standard JRPG party archetypes. They are assigned archetypes, but they don't quite fit them in the way you would expect, and it's...
Right.
It's so interesting.
It's just really damn good. Like, it's just... It feels so modern, and it came out in 2006.
I really think that, like, out of everything, if you are a fan of JRPGs at all, if you're a fan of mainstream JRPGs, I think you owe it to yourself to give 12 a shot. And I mean, give it an earnest shot. It's got a bit...
Because it takes a while to get going.
It's got a bit of a hike to get used to things, but, like, it really does pay off. And once you start, like, giving it its fair shake, like, you will... Mm-hmm. You will, at the very least, be intrigued at what it tries.
Yeah, because it just tried something new. It tried to make a single-player MMORPG, and as somebody who loves big open world spaces and JRPGs, which are two things that never really click together, like, most JRPGs don't really do the whole big open world thing anymore. So, like, I love the big open maps, but I love JRPGs, and... I hate MMOs. I don't like people, at all. So it's kind of like, here's this game that tried to do that. It tried to make a single-player MMO. And it kind of worked.
It really ended up working pretty well for them.
Yeah, it kind of worked fine.
It's got some hiccups here and there, but, like,
it's kind of strange.
It really, it kind of adds to it. And again, once you get used to it, like, it's not that bad, and you learn how to deal with it, basically.
Yeah, it's not like Final Fantasy XIII's you're trapped in a hallway for 25 hours, you know? Like, the game is open the whole time. It's just so strange sometimes, and you're like, what were you going for here, Square
one of the
Enix?
questions I have about, like, is, like, what were the developers thinking when they designed this area to have this layout? Like, what was the blueprint sketch for this dungeon's layout?
What was the intent for the Gambit system? Was it literally to have the game play itself, or did they think you were kind of like an RTS micromanager, but it ended up being the game was playing itself instead of being a little bit more interactive? Like, what was the intent here? I would really like to know. Yeah. I genuinely want to know, what was the design intent with Final Fantasy XII?
I would.
So yeah, if somebody can link me to like a video,
like a documentary about this game or something, that'd be really dope.
Or just a really in-depth YouTube video about the development of Final Fantasy XII and what happened and why. Like, I would be really interested. So yeah, that's Final Fantasy. That's part one of Final Fantasy.
So we'll pick this up in a few days, and then we'll get into the actual story, which is where, of course, for a JRPG, does one thing like all others, which is the story is the brunt of it.
Right.
But and
then it does something really interesting and unique with its story.
Yeah. So we'll get to that in a few days, but for now, you guys can enjoy part one of this, and we'll catch you later.